when events were playing out, especially during the second wave, even during the first wave, the migrants crisis and everything, the way we managed to flatten the curve after the first, the first wave, then how the second wave sort of unfolded and the whole oxygen issue. So the way the events were, unfolding, I was really noticing that the media, the general mainstream media, is very like oriented to, the sensation of the news cycle, that what works and what brings the TRP and all of that. And that I felt that, they left out so many details. It's not magically that the country was able to respond the way it did. It's because, there was meticulous planning and, lacks of hands behind this. When the virus from China, it had spread to the UAE, it had spread to Europe, parts of Europe, it had spread to the United States. Everybody thought that India was the next hotspot. And if the virus comes here, that's it. That's doomsday for the country. That's doomsday for the world. Now, around the same time, the Prime Minister, he was hearing from his, personal network of people about the severity of the virus, the ground reports coming in, what China wasn't letting out, our intelligence reports were coming in. And this is all in January and February 2020. At that point, he spoke with the secretary and he said, this is a situation where it is better to be over-prepared than under. Let's put together a team and let's figure out how we're going to deal with the virus when it comes to our doorstep. Not if it comes, but when it comes to our doorstep. That's how, the immediate team was put in place in, early 2020. So January and February of 2020, our principal science advisor and Dr. V.K. Paul of Niti Aayog, they started, having multiple one-on-one sessions at Niti Aayog to figure out the nature and the character of the virus that was coming out, what the scientist community was saying, and how other countries were responding. So this was all pre-March 2020. WHO maintained until March 2020 that there is no human-to-human transmission. Yeah. It was only when Dr. Paul and the principal scientific advisor, Mr. Vijay Raghavan, when they were looking at the doubling rate of the virus, and they're like, if there is no human-to-human transmission, this doubling rate is way too high. So there has to be human-to-human transmission for such a high doubling rate. And that's how, we started depending on our own expertise, indigenous expertise versus listening to what was coming in from outside the country. So when the Prime Minister took office in 2014, it's no secret that our bureaucracy likes to work very singularly, very individually. And this is something, that really bothered him. Since he took office in 2014, he's been putting together teams of very senior bureaucrats across ministries and across departments. He would give them like a common task. He would ask them to come together and find solutions for that common task. And he would do things like he would send some bureaucrats to, the hometown where they first started their service. And then they like tell them to introspect that is this how you started out? Where is your energy? Why don't you try to, problem solve more practically? So by the time the pandemic hit us, 2020, the bureaucrats kind of knew how the Prime Minister likes to work. So they knew that they needed to come together. It had to be a whole of government approach for this problem to be solved. This is number one. Number two, there was a very high level meeting which the principal secretary had chaired, and he had asked a bunch of questions that how long is it going to take us to, increase the testing labs and, a bunch of questions like that. And then, he kind of saw that if departments work singularly, the progress is going to be much slower. And, then the problem is just going to snowball into something that all of us cannot control, So this is a feedback that he also gave to the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister was very clear that, it has to be a whole of government approach. Not one department is going to be accountable. Everybody is going to be accountable. So they formed empowered teams. They formed 11 empowered teams. And these empowered teams would have senior bureaucrats and private experts and researchers from across the board. And everybody would sit together and problem solve. And these empowered teams would report directly to the PM. So they were given that decision-making authority, which is usually slow in the bureaucracy. So that's how everybody sort of came together and, was able to work on this together. So in March 2020, we barely had any PPE kits, even masks, like, a few lakhs, which was absolutely not enough for all of us, not even for our healthcare workers. PPE kits, we didn't even have, like the manufacturing baselines, to manufacture them here. So we were absolutely, under-equipped. Even for ventilators, we were importing all of our ventilators. We only had about 16,000 ventilators in our public hospitals, which was not going to be enough at all, because by then, Dr. Paul and, our principal scientific advisors knew that this is a respiratory problem. So in case of escalation of disease, ventilator is going to be an absolutely crucial tool. So we're going to need a lot more of those. So then they started to, for PPE kits and for masks, the Department of Textiles, and the industry came together, and, they very, very quickly put in place, guidelines and, baselines on which, how they have to be manufactured. Private sector came together so quickly and helped government so well that by July, we were not only were we self-sufficient, but we were exporting them as well to other countries. And ventilators also, we were able to, ramp up capacities very quickly. We were able to replace parts which are difficult to get with, 3D printing. So we really, were innovative, and we innovated and, found solutions. I'll tell you why we needed to go under a full lockdown. So some of the countries were trying to have like a sort of a mixed response, where they would let economic activities go on, but everything else would be shut. But then we were we were also lucky that the virus hit us almost a month later than it hit many other parts. So we were able to observe. So we were seeing that even in this mixed response, there came a point where the virus and the transmission got so out of hand that they had to go under immediate lockdown. So very senior doctors, for example, Dr. Devi Shetty, they recommended that better to be preemptive and, go under total lockdown now versus panicking and going under an unplanned lockdown when the transmission goes to, gets too much to control, when we run out of hospital space, when we don't have enough doctors for for our patients. So instead of that situation arising, it's better to just be preemptive about it and flatten the curve, augment our capacities first, get ready to handle that surge of cases that's coming our way in urban, rural, and semi-rural, areas. And which is why we went under total lockdown. Now, why the country followed it is because of our prime minister. Everybody was very, very scared. We were seeing the reports coming in from Italy. We were seeing, coffins kind of like stacked up and taken to, burial grounds, in ambulances. Everybody was very, very afraid, and we all needed to trust somebody. We needed that strong leadership. The Janta curfew was like a litmus test. When the country rallied behind the Janta curfew, he knew that the people were looking to him for advice, were looking to him for leadership, and he knew that he had to communicate directly to the people, and he was going to be accountable. So that's what sort of worked, and that's why I think 1.3 billion people stayed at home.